Welcome to Behind the Visual, a podcast where I interview the people responsible for creating all those pictures and images you see out in your world every day. I am your host, advertising and lifestyle photographer, Mark Hansen. And today, my guest is John Roberts. John is the VP, Executive Creative Director at Wray Ward. And those guys have got some great clients. They include Levolor, Moen, Velux, Sunbrella, and a whole lot more. I think you're really going to enjoy this. He's got a great story about a shoot in Brazil that went really strange, and also some reactions to people when they first use a bidet. So definitely listen for that. Check it out. It's a great interview, and let's see what John has to say. Well, I'll tell you what, man. First of all, thank you. I really appreciate you doing this, taking time out to do it. But let's hear about it. Tell me how you became a creative director, VP, how you got to Wray Ward, how it started. Did you start like as a kid and want to do this kind of thing? Did you want to do something else and you fell into this? How exactly did
Okay, like the full.
Yeah, give me the full thing, man.
Ouch. It all started. So I could always do art. But I didn't want to be like selling my paintings on the corner. And I was working in a deli with a couple of guys who were going to. I was a math and computer science major at St. John's, and they were going to this School of Visual Arts in Manhattan, and they showed me their portfolios, and and they were in like the advertising design program. And it wasn't the art that blew me away, it was the ideas. I love the concepts, and I mean, sort of a million years ago on Madison Avenue, like in the 60s, way before my time, by the way, they used art people because somebody had to draw the ideas up before the client would buy them and go produce them. So that's how the sort of art directors kind of got into the ad world. But then, when there was a creative revolution that took over, the writers and art directors were sort of one and one became three, and you'd sit with someone and the ideas that you came up with, I was hooked. One glance and I knew what I wanted to be when I grew up. And that's that idea of staring at a blank page. It is the most exciting and terrifying thing ever. But it could be whatever you want it to be. Fast forward 30 years later, if I have an idea that I doodle, I draw everything. I take a lot of photography. I usually draw everything before I like try to visualize it in my head. But that magical moment, like if you're shooting something for me and I've had this crazy idea and I've got this, this llama jumping over some random thing, and then I see that moment of bringing that idea to life is like, it's an addiction, and it is just as exciting today as it was when I did my first commercial, and I'm in the desert, outside of Los Angeles with a director, and I look through the camera and I see the idea coming to life, and that is just a really cool rush.
What was your first gig like that assignment?
So when I started, I got a job at a school on Madison Avenue, and working at Young and Rubican, which is like the largest independent agency in the world. And so we had a lot of big brands, and it was the coolest thing because when you're a student, you're flipping through the awards books and you're memorizing, learning about all these hotshot creatives' names, and and being lucky enough to be in New York City. There's a lot of them there. There's so many agencies, and I was on a floor with probably about 35 creatives. So you're either writer or an art director. That was it, and that's all that was on the 7th floor. And I was a pain in the ass to every one of those people because I had to start as an assistant, so I'm doing layouts for other people and doing their mechanicals. And every spare minute I had, if I saw there was a gangbang of 8 teams on something, I'm like, why not 9? And so I would show them my ideas, and I was lucky enough to have like some of those ideas sold. And I was for a very short time an assistant, and got to sell some Prestone campaign. So it was Prestone antifreeze. So it was
Oh, wow.
it was a big TV campaign. I got to art direct, go out to LA, work with big hotshot directors, and shoot 3 commercials. And then they ran like, well, I'm watching playoff football, with my dad and my brothers and my brother-in-law, and my spots would come on. I thought it was hot stuff.
Yeah. So how cool is that? When it came on, you go, hey, I did that. That's mine.
Yeah. And it's weird because it's always the same. It's like you kind of recognize that sound, so whatever that soundtrack is, or you see a visual, and then you're like, oh my gosh, that's my spot. And still, at Wray Ward today, we do a lot of work in the home category. So HGTV is on in the kitchen all the time, and someone will be like, look, there's our Velux spot. And it's still, it hasn't gotten old. It hasn't gotten old at all. It's really exciting. That's good to hear. The thing that was sort of actually kind of an epiphany for me was, again, you're thinking your hot stuff and you create this big national campaign for it. And it was Preston at the time. And then I remember going into like a Walmart or some kind of, some store, and I heard a commercial or like a video, and there's a video screen, and it was for Preston, and it wasn't my campaign, it wasn't my language, it wasn't any of those things. And I tell people to this day, I use that story because I'm like, customers don't experience your brand in a vacuum.
Yeah.
And so when you ideate, you want it to be consistent across every medium. And, fast forward 30 years later, and we've got a kabillion mediums out there that we're being hit with every day. And so it's more important than ever for your brand to have a consistent voice. They can be specific for the different mediums, and the experiences will always be different, but, keeping that consistency across the mediums. And, I tell people I'm not a control freak, I'm a consistency freak. And it was actually from that very first campaign. And when I'm, one of my partners was from the Southeast, and I got really excited about being able to move to the Southeast and have sort of a better quality of life. But the creativity that was happening in the Southeast was pretty amazing. So working at an agency that has public relations and social media and being able to buy media and doing, consumer research and insights, having all of that together, client can come into our office and, in the old days it was, hey, I need a spot, I need an ad, now they're like, we want you to engage with our audience. We have a budget and you guys figure out the most effective way to do it. So if we're creating campaign sites and, full-blown e-commerce sites or whatever that is, we can make it all work together. So having, having all those toys and all those tools at your disposal to be able to, do really, it may sound, like marketing speak, but it's how you make better performing work. We have a motion and photography department in-house. We have developers and designers and all those people, so that we can make just about everything. And we'll always still like work with specialists like you and go outside. But if you need to have if it's important that someone needs to have an interview or a product demonstration, you can't wait and hire an outside production company. It's like, you got to get in the car, you got to go over there now, you got to shoot it, you got to come back, you got to edit, and you got to push it out that night. And so I don't know if I'm jumping around too much, but going from sort of the old days of just working with blinders on, and now being able to sort of see the whole landscape and talk to the people who are buying the media or the people that are interviewing customers, and understanding that I'm definitely, I loved math because I like solving problems, but I was creative. So this is amazing today, where it's like you can push something out, and if it's like a digital campaign, you can find out the next day if it's tanking or if it's doing well, and you can adjust it. And so we have like a measurement department. So our guy Bill he's creating dashboards all the time. So like you can look at a visual representation of how your work is doing. Good or bad,
right.
Adjustments. And so it's for me, it's it's sort of a rush, because we're not in the art business. This isn't art for art's sake. Like, people are hiring us to get results, so it's like, use your creativity to be interruptive and engaging, and then you see the results, and it's interesting too. I think it's a good time to be a creative person, because when I started at big agencies, clients were the agency we worked for were very conservative, and it was almost doing anything risky was too risky. Today, being ordinary is too risky, because you just run the risk of like work that's Teflon and slides right past people. It's like, you got to be interruptive. And you have to take different tactics all the time too, because you can't just be loud and abrasive, because if everybody's loud and abrasive, you don't stand out. So, you constantly have to be watching the universe out there, seeing who's doing what, and then try to figure out inventive ways of, creating a voice and a look and a feel and a perspective and an approach for your client, So they're very, very open to trying something different. We start off with, hey, we don't want to do what everybody else is doing in the category, whatever category that is, and they want to stand out. So it's really interesting. I think it's an amazing time to be a creative person.
Do you think that most of your clients, most of the clients you guys have, are you the agency that they work with, or I know some of these bigger clients have multiple agencies that they do different things with, or do you guys try and control that and be, as far as, because we're talking about keeping it on brand, and I've noticed that even my wife's company, which is smaller, that she has everything run through her pretty much to make sure it stays on brand. But there are people who will try and come up with stuff and they want to send it out and it's off brand a little bit. And then I know I've talked to some art directors at bigger companies. They're like, they'll be out in public and see something like that's completely off brand. How'd that get past us and get out there? So how do you guys control that and keep it?
So there's two, I'm generalizing, but there's two paths that I see. There's two approaches out there. Like Coca-Cola has, it's either 17 or 19 agencies. If you have a marketing group internally on the client side that can be in charge of that and really be, it's up to them to really be the keeper of the brand. And there are really great people that are really amazing at that, and they can do that, and they can download you the sort of the brand Bible, the standards for those brands, the look, the feel, the tone, and their pillars, and are good at it. Others aren't, and if it's, then you divide and conquer, and then you have disparate efforts from different folks. Left hand doesn't know what the right hand is doing, and it collapses. Larger, in general, larger clients, like huge clients, like Coca-Cola, for example, they've got that, and I remember in college watching a reel of McDonald's commercials versus Burger King. Burger King and McDonald's, like Burger King's been trying to figure it out forever, reinventing the wheel constantly, and they haven't been able to do it. And you wouldn't have known that 6 different agencies did that McDonald's reel. They were so, whether you like McDonald's or not, whether you like the creative or not, it wasn't that. It was, this is our soul. This is who we are. This is what we're about. And it felt like the same team did all 20 of those spots. And that's where it was like, wow, they've got their stuff together. They know who they are. So for some of our clients, we may be just doing, just doing the media buy. We may just be doing some of the creative work or doing their website, or all their demonstration videos. And then others we do absolutely everything for. And it's really great when you can do that, because you don't have to reinvent the wheel each time you start a new project, because you have a brand team that's fluent in that customer and that brand and their target, and everyone's on the same page, and it's really awesome. Like when we do planning for I don't want to use account names because
that's fine.
But like for one of our big accounts where we do like we're running digital banners, we're running media, print, we're doing rich media stuff that's driving them to a site, and when they get to a site, it's like, what page do we want them to land, and when they land on the page, what do we want them to do, and then what is all of the steps. So we sit down with with client engagement people, we sit down with content folks, we sit down with measurement, we sit down with media, we sit down with the insights people, the creative people, and all and our web designers, and our back end guys even, and we look at the campaign as a whole, and we're like, all right, and it's sort of like we lay everything out, what's running where, and it's like a big Stratego board, and it's really awesome to go, wow, you know what, that, even a media person will be like, you know what, you ran something, it's a different image, but it was kind of pink and blue last year with that sunset, and it looks like the same thing. I was like, let's get something fresher. And it was like, that never dawned on me because it's a new campaign, it's a new shot. It felt like the brand, but it was, and then, the measurement person's like, we should really infuse these words, from that into the banners, because that's been I've been seeing great results there. And so that's when it's really great. So you can have your agency doing it for you, or you just have to have, that team on the client side that their fingers are, that much in that, where they can do that. And a lot of clients that, CMOs, and brand managers, they don't have the capacity to do that. Their business hackers, also. So it just depends on the size of the organization. We're very good because we do it for a lot of our clients, where we do everything. So when we're not doing everything, we make sure that that we ask all the right questions and look at all the work that they're doing. And everyone in the creative department follows every one of our clients on social media, and we share, and we're like, look what they posted today. What's going on? And then we could call them up and we'll be like, hey, this is awesome, or this, what are you guys starting over here? Because we're about to have a shoot, and this doesn't feel like what you asked us to do. And so, it's a little bit all over the place. And like I said, depending on the players, it could work flawlessly, or it could be hard. It's interesting because I think, especially in the sort of agency world, agencies, like photographers and design shops, like there could be 6 different design shops and 10 different photographers working for a brand. And there's something about agencies that, they kind of want to be everything for their clients, and there's a lot of competitiveness. And we've been really good with working with other agencies, and the really good clients, like we worked for this large financial client, and they had their consumer agency, and we were doing some more B2B stuff for them, so the trade side, and they had their agency present the brand standards and the brand pillars and the positioning for the company, and it was like they were reading from sacred scriptures. Like our client, they were all bought in. The agency and the client were doing such a good job of creating this voice for the brand, and they shared it with us, and it was great because we had the, we had the rule books, we had the sacred scripture that we had to work from, and it was beautiful. It was seamless, and that's where I think we're coming across that a lot more these days than in the past. But like I said, it's just, you just have to take that effort. So does that answer your question?
Yeah, it does for sure. Yeah,
Am I
and
rambling
I think
on?
no, you're
Hopefully,
good, man. No, that was good. And it definitely explains it. It helps me understand it better for sure. And I think you got to have some definite. I can see how the agencies would want to. This is my baby. This is our thing. We're doing this. We want to have it all. And then when the client takes it off to another agency to do, like you guys say, to do the B2B, I could see some agencies being like, yeah, I don't really want to share this. But at the same time, I think you have to have, if you're a good enough agency, you can have confidence in yourself to just say, this is our deal. This is what we do. We need to make sure it all works together. And then it all runs nice and smooth.
A great example is like you work so closely with your clients to be like, who are we talking to? Mm-hmm. What do they think? What do we want them to think? And you work all year crafting messaging with them, and a look and a feel and an approach and a whole arsenal of work. And then you go visit them at a trade show and you look at their booths and you're like, where did this stuff come? What's going on here? And or you get there and it's an extension of what you've been working on all year, and you see the both, but when it's disjointed, it's just, it's divide and conquer. You just want cohesiveness. It's really important.
So I know you guys handle a lot of stuff in-house because you have your video production company in-house, you have a photography in-house, and I also know that you're a really good photographer. So by the way, I've been very impressed with the latest Wray Ward post on Instagram. Yeah, those really nice, man. So do you shoot any for the agency, or did you ever? And even on top of that, so it's two questions in one, I guess, or just two separate questions. And did you ever want to be a photographer, pursue that as an avenue as well, financially?
Yeah. So being sort of an art background, I love to invent images. And as an art director in sort of, the business, a lot of what you do exists in a photographic state when it's done. So, you might have campaigns that are, digitally created and illustrated and, or different types of, alt type kinds of things. But looking at imagery and trying to create different looks and feels, I've always loved photography and, in art school. And I've thought about the photography thing, but I like to create the campaign too. And, or be like, what is an art director going to do with my image when he gets his hands on it? And I'm sure you've had that feeling a million times.
Oh, yes.
And so, but when I started, and I don't mean to sound like such an old timer, but like it was, it was film, and you couldn't get your hands on the images. Like you could, as an art director, it was like you hired photographers. You'd have these big, $200,000 shoots, and you still, only get to see like, some printed contact sheets, and then you pick your favorites, and you'd never be able to like, now it's like, after 3 weeks of retouching, you'd be like, oh, I didn't notice that little piece of fuzz, and I can go in Photoshop and I can open it, and I can tweak it, and fix something without having to send it out. And so, and the latitude of what you can do to an image today is so amazing that it was so exciting to be able to get, like, we still don't touch it obviously, but have it on our screen, and we can crop it and move it and shift it around, and it's it's something I love to do, and I think spending a career of asking someone, hey, I want it shot from this perspective, I want this depth of field, I want this look. I started shooting because I wanted to have more content, and like I might have been shooting a TV spot, and a lot of shooting is being at the right place at the right time. So you're in this, the bulk of the, a lot of the costs of shoot is getting there, getting the right people, getting that perfect person in the perfect makeup with the perfect light, and there would be no stills that were part of that job. And, and so I would have a TV spot and I would have no corresponding imagery for consistency. So I started shooting when we started shooting motion, or when, our cameras were good enough to shoot motion. If I had a still shoot that I know the client was going to want some motion for, I could be there, and it really wasn't a big addition to the production. And the yield from the shoot was so much greater, and the consistency was completely consistent. So that's kind of how it started, and I absolutely love to do it. It's more for me. I think when it makes sense for a client, we do it, but I would never force myself or whoever we have. There's so many amazing photographers out there, and as a photographer, you're looking for, you try to find your voice, right? For me, it's a little bit more of my art and my release. And if my approach to things or how I like to look at things makes sense for a client and I'm going to be there, we'll do it. But, like we have a big fashion shoot coming up, and I'm like, this is Mark, this is his wheelhouse, and so I wouldn't try to do that, let egos get in the way, sometimes, well,
I will say working with you is having the background you have and having the creativity and the brain that you have make it easier for me working with you, because you have an idea, what you're looking for. I have confidence in you because I've seen what you can do. So I know that it's not one of these things where sometimes you have an art director who doesn't say a word and just says, okay, go shoot this, or you've seen, or you haven't seen what they do, and then they give you an idea and you go, that's not going to work. It's not going to look good. But with you, it's nice because I've seen what you can do. I've worked with you. You have the ideas in your head. So I think it makes the shoots go a lot smoother because you have this thing in your head of what you want and what you need. And my job then just becomes to make that a reality and bring out what you have in your head. And it's a lot easier on my end for stuff like that. So it's nice working like that.
And you. I think it started also with me trying to be a better communicator, because there's so many times where I've seen photographers or directors lose their mind on sets because they're like, I don't have a close-up wide-angle lens. I can't do what you're asking. It's physically impossible. And I know you've experienced that. And so understanding, what I'm trying to get at, and and sit, be able to tell, a photographer, that framing on that guy is good, but I don't like you that close with a wider lens. Let's move back and do a longer lens and compress it and, get a little more pleasing, like I know you like say you just like 75 millimeters is your sweet spot, I know that about you, and I'm not giving anything away. But it's like, being able to, it's like being a good creative director, is to be able to give direction that people can act on, and like, I'm not saying I'm a great parent or a great boss, but my philosophy, and it would probably apply also, it would apply exactly to you, is if you want to be a good boss, don't forget what it was like to be an employee. Mm-hmm. If you want to be a good dad, don't forget what it was like to have to deal with what the kids have to deal with, and I remember my frustrations with creative directors, or parents, and, or when I've been shooting and I have somebody who can't give me any direction, and, it's like, don't forget what it was like to be sitting here behind this, this chunk of metal trying to make something happen, and you can't tell me what you want, but we have to walk away with something fantastic today. So I think it kind of started there, and then it's photography is like, there's so much science and math in it too. I think, I don't know, I find that photographers are either like they're artists or they're complete gear geeks, because like they're just all about the techie stuff. So, but anyway, I hope that answered your question. And I don't like, and one thing, I was glad to hear from some of the people that work for me. I like to go into a shoot knowing what I want it to look like at the end, and not shooting a bunch of stuff and then applying stuff and figuring out afterwards, because then it's just kind of BS gimmicks.
Yeah.
And
I prefer that. I mean, anytime because I think it makes the shoot run a lot smoother.
Yeah.
And especially if I'm planning out, say I'm doing a shoot for me, just for my book.
Right.
I have it planned out pretty much. I have the go-bys. I have, everything set up. So here are the 4 or 5 shots that I want to get today. Right. I know exactly what I want and how, and it's nice when you have a client who does the same thing. So you know what the end result they're looking for is, which makes life a lot easier, as opposed to going, okay, well, we have a general concept here and we're just going to shoot, and then we hope we're going to get what we need.
Yeah.
And, it's definitely more difficult, I think, for everybody when you don't have at least 75% of it kind of locked down to this is what we want our end product to look like.
What I like about having like I'll shoot stuff for myself, and I keep I have a Flickr account where I put stuff up, and I'll try strange things. But then there's a little visual library that I can go, like we have a new campaign, and like, oh, I did this thing with a weird shadow on a wall like a couple of years, and I could go right to it. And so the messing around with something in post and doing weird stuff is beneficial for then you can go, oh, because it helps you go, oh, let's try this on a real shoot, for a paying client. And you can show them what you mean. And so that's the wonderful thing about, having these tools at our disposal, having this digital stuff too, because I will say that's when it's okay to mess with something afterwards, where you just had this photo and you didn't, and then you played with it, because then you can go and actually go do it, try to do it in camera.
Have you ever had anything that you've shot just for you like that, and say you used it as just a sample for a client or whatever? It's like, hey, we're thinking of something like this, and used it, and then the client goes, oh, I love that, let's just go ahead and use this.
Yeah, it happens a lot. It happens a lot too, I think, because there's a comfort level for clients, and I always tell my people, be careful what you put in there in your layout, because they're going to fall in love with that. And so many times, if you go out there and you pull this Ansel Adams stock shot and you throw it in your layout, you better come back with that, because that's that's the bar. And so my second oldest daughter, I had a digital camera. When I was doing layouts, I'd be like, it was for this car seat manufacturer, and I was designing their new packaging. And so I was like, oh, could you come here? I wanted to photograph her in the perspective and the light that I thought would look good for the package. And they're like, who's the girl? I'm like, oh, that's Bree. And they're like, we want Bree. And Bree became the face of a launch of these car seats. And she was in the print ads, and but it was like, once they saw that and they, and they show it to a committee, and you have 8 people nod and say, this is what we like, they want that. And so, so that's, that's happened. And then there are other times too, we appreciate the relationships we have with the clients. And if we, there are some destination clients that we have, every time, if I'm there for a 9 o'clock meeting, I'm up before sunrise, and I'm out shooting either prospective locations for future shoots, or just to get it. And it's like, we produce publications for them. We produce, it's added value. I won't charge them. I won't charge them for that. It's like, it's being grateful for the relationship. And they don't hesitate to, to reward you by giving you their business year after year. And it's really, that's where it's nice, because it's, they know that you're, honestly, we're in it for them, and we want them to have as many assets as possible. And, it's surprising, I think, when I first moved to Charlotte and I worked for Price McNabb, which was kind of like a biggish agency for the small town that Charlotte was. There was an impression that we're shooting all the time, and so often you get you have a piece of business and we're really not shooting all the time, or the budget aren't there to be able to do that. So that's where it's nice to have the in-house resources, because then you can, it's sort of like, as an art director, the other reason that I would shoot a lot too is, I would be working on a brand, and doing a new campaign each year, and I'd have to have, it's like they want a new campaign, but I had to use the same guy sitting on the same sofa that we shot 6 years ago, and I want fresh work, So, and if the budget wasn't there, we'd work around it. The cool thing about having that, I think, this is a really interesting conundrum that pushes us to be creative. I sort of got scared one day, because given that we have our media group in house, anytime one of our ads runs in a magazine, they tab it. They put these little pink, stickies on there so that you can flip.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Well, if you're an agency, like, let's say, that specializes in luxury items, it might be a car ad, and then it might be a watch ad, and then it might be some other type of high-end crystal or something. And the car company, client, you could shoot a car for, and the watch, you could shoot the watch for. Being in the home category, in like a lot of home fashions, like, I looked at the magazine, there was 5 tabs tabbed in like Southern Living or Veranda or something, and I was like, our clients are seeing what we're doing for our other clients in that same issue, 5 of them. And I was like, I had like a little anxiety attack, because I'm like, oh my God, I hope we don't have like an agency style or an approach that we're phoning in. And of course we don't. But that realization that day, looking at that magazine, I was like, oh my gosh, I have to make sure that we're not phoning it in. And it keeps us honest, and it keeps us creative, and it makes you approach things and go, oh, we've got the chair client. You can't just shoot a photo of a chair with some nice language, it's, and so it makes you up your game. And so why I like having a studio is, when there's downtime, I can have the photo guys or the video guys or our animators try different things, on our dime. I think, big famous bands. You play music, don't you?
A little bit, yeah. I play guitar a little.
Okay, so when you have a band, it's so expensive to get into the studio. Mm-hmm. That when you get in the studio, all you can do is play that song and record it, because you're going to run out of time. And then you have the famous bands like the U2s and the Beatles of the world. They came out with these crazy sounds, and they pushed their genre, and they pushed the limits of their craft, because they were in the studio all the time. They'd be like, that's why Jimi Hendrix built his own electric Leyland Studios, and like at 3 a.m, if he had an idea, he can go in there and try and maybe fail 10 times, but have those tools at their disposal. And so that's what I like about having a studio, is those guys.
What I heard? Sorry. What I heard about the Beatles? Like before, I think it was the Beatles, before they started recording, before they got a little more famous and were recording a lot, that there were literally times where the engineers were set to come in. So you could only record, as a band, you could only record between like 3, 4, 5 hour stints or whatever it was. So you could only record at those times during that period of the day. And then the studio would shut down. And then the Beatles were like, no, we want to start recording at whatever, say 5 o'clock in the afternoon and we're going to record till 3 a.m. And they would get so much more done in that period of time and get it done in, that much done in a day as opposed to like 3 days. So they changed the whole way it was recording, I guess, when it comes to.
Yeah. And having those tools at your disposal is key. And then it lets you try different things, I mean, I heard interviews where they're like, each time a new album came out, they were trying to, everybody was copying them. So then they had to like keep setting the bar, and which is really hard. I mean, that's what great brands do. As soon as people start copying them, they zag again, and the really, really good photographers, agencies, clients, they're the ones that, that have to keep setting the bar, and reinventing it. And so that's why I like it. Even if we, experiment and come up with a look and then hire a specialist, like, if it's food, you want to hire someone who shoots food all day long, and and so it's like some clients having multiple agencies. It's I don't feel that there's any threat to, like I said, when it makes sense, I call you, because that's your wheelhouse.
Right.
So
how often do you end up going outside since you have the production studio in-house? How often average you think a year you have to go outside for other photographers, directors, that kind of thing?
Yeah, it's less for sure.
Yeah.
It started though as it started as the below the line things for video. Our motion department actually started in our content group, which is paid, earned, owned, and shared media, working for folks doing interviews and stuff like that, and then it grew, the call for what we were doing was, we luckily had some really talented people. So it depends on your stable of folks, but I would say maybe half, maybe it changed, could be as much as half. And again, I think a lot of the things that we may have produced, the money wasn't there to go to outside production houses or facilities or folks, because it's still, budgets are just always tight.
Oh yeah, yeah, I get that for sure. Do you get a lot of promos from photographers and directors? Because I noticed you on what is it, Agency Access. I think you're listed on there, and they have you as, I think when it comes to was hiring photographers or whatever, they have you in green dollar signs, like you guys do it a ton. So I would assume that you're constantly getting promos from.
Yeah, because like there's some. So this is I think a really important point. I don't know if I've ever shared this with you, but I was speaking to some type of entity that was comprised of photographers, and someone raised their hand and like tried to put me on the spot, and you're like, what does a like me have to do to get a guy like you to answer, to look at my work? And I said, and it was a Charlotte body.
I can imagine this answer already.
And I asked the room to raise their hand who's ever sent me an email, called me, or sent me a promo piece. I'm like, just call me. There's never been a time. So as visual people, I look at every promo that comes across my desk. And usually if there are those annoying wafer seals, it's got 3 wafer seals down it, I will tear it open. Every single designer and art director in my company looks at every email, clicks on portfolio links, and looks at work. Whether we respond probably is not, because a lot of times it's like, hey, this guy just shot this whole Eagle series out in Nebraska, and I'm working on a soup account. So
right.
How am I going to call him, right? So that happens a lot, but that medium is not dead, and and so it was interesting because immediately there was a lot of, well, yeah, I guess we're as an industry, we're pretty bad at self-promotion. And, but the other thing too, is I'll have, we'll set up like a lunchtime or an hour where I know it's hard for photographers to get their work in front of folks. So I'll pull, 10 designers in the room and do a portfolio review, or the reps will come in and be efficient with our time and show 5 photographers that they're repping. The only danger that I would, that I would caution is we've got pretty good photographic memories, designers. And don't show the same shit 2 years later. I don't want to see that shot of that guy that was really awesome you nailed 8 years ago. Unless it's nestled in, like, that's part of your greatest hits, but you've got fresh stuff,
Right.
Like, I looked at every email, when you went, to Europe and we're shooting some of that stuff. It was beautiful. I love seeing that stuff, and holding on to that. And when the time came up, I was like, you know what, Mark would be right, and I was able to share that with my client in a matter of minutes, because I remembered the woman with the dog and her hat, and I was like, this is probably what we're talking about, isn't it? And my client's like, oh my God, that's perfect. This guy's in Charlotte. Wow, let's use him. So that's an example of direct mail, even if it's on a delay, working really well.
Well, that's what I try and tell some friends of mine who are starting, assistants, whatever. It's like, you keep up with the people you want to work with, stay consistent, because I've had times where it's been 5 years before I ever hear anything. And they go, oh yeah, I've been seeing your stuff, but nothing came up there you were right for until now. And then next thing you know, you're getting a phone call and going, hey, can you be in LA in 3 days? We need to shoot, or whatever it is. So I think it's just being consistent. And you handled that question a lot better, because I thought you were going to say something kind of like, well, when you send me something interesting enough and that works with what we need, then I'll get in touch with you.
No, it was really like, because I was like, who are you, first of all? Because I've never heard your name. I've never seen your work. And don't accuse me of not looking at your work if you're not sending it to me.
Yeah, that's what I can't even believe they'd ask the question. If they haven't sent you something, because the only way I would ask that question is if I had sent you multiple things and multiple emails, multiple phone calls, and not heard anything back from you. Then maybe I'd be like, okay, what do I got to do to get your attention, to get you to respond? But even now, I assume that you will respond if whatever I send is something that you can use sometime very soon, because just otherwise there's no point in contacting me, because for what reason?
Yeah. And Lisa Adams was in the audience too. And I said, Lisa, how many times have I emailed you about how much I love one of your promos? That was somebody, when I started in New York, I worked on a lot of food accounts, and her food stuff is, she's experimenting on, she is phenomenal, one of the best in the country. And I don't work on those pieces, it's we have like oil filters or home builder kind of, projects I'm working on, but I'm like, oh my God, your taste level, your lighting, your sense of design, really, I think really great photographers are really great designers too. There's a lot of what I've noticed in our business, not to get off on a different tangent, but creative people are problem solvers, I have designers who, they can send an email to all staff for like, it's one sentence, it's got like 6 typos in it. But if they're working on a project and they don't have a writer, they have to write a headline. And so their creativity comes through and manifests itself in the words, because they need some good words, And I think there's we're creative people, and we try to create fresh works and thoughts, and you design a 2-dimensional space, and would probably be a great designer, and we might not even realize it, because how you compose things and arrange them in that world. So
I actually got some award for a design I did on a promo. Didn't even know it. I sent it to a printer, and then the printer sent it in, and it got a design award. I was like, all right. But I think it's similar to being an athlete, like a good athlete, where a lot of these football players, these NFL guys, they also played basketball or they played baseball, and they were really good at those things as well. So I think as being a designer or just a creative person, that a lot of times that kind of bleeds into opposite directions. Because I've seen art directors, creative directors, guys like you, that you're at the agency doing that, but then you're also great photographers, or whatever it is as well.
That's a really good point too, and it's something that I think is worth bringing up here. One thing that I noticed why it was good, before we had a studio, I changed the way I worked with a lot of photographers. If we were doing recurring campaigns over the course, like 3 big shoots a year for a particular brand that had like seasonal stuff, I started to bring the photographer into the concepting sessions. The budgets allowed it. I actually brought them to client meetings where we brainstormed, because I had this kind of epiphany when I was back in Madison Avenue. You come up with an idea, you show it internally, it gets changed 10 times and revised and made better. You show it to your client, they revise it, they may test it, they may show it to everyone internally, and then you have this thing that's sort of blessed. And then you go and you try to find the best director or the best photographer. And all they can do at that point is glorify your comp, because it's like, well, I've got to shoot this guy, cowboy style walking in, and it's like, and there's been so many times where I'm on a shoot where the photographer or the director would be like, it would have been really cool. And I'm like, oh my gosh,
yeah,
amazing. But now I don't have another half day, or I can't have a second, a person, or whatever that thing is, because it wasn't blessed. So that's why I like, having to be able to have a conversation. I would also insist when I was shooting to bring the editor to the shoot, because if we don't have all the pieces, all that it's sort of like playing Chopped. It's sort of like, here's a rutabaga, here's a tomato, here's some chocolate. Make me an amazing meal. That's poor editors. They get stuck and they're like, wow, it would be really nice if I had that scene from the left too, so that I had a cutaway point in case that person flubs their lines. And that's having lots of failures and missed opportunities. But also that's what I like about and bringing folks in, because they're creative people. They don't just push buttons and execute your medium shot. And so I've tried to do that as much as possible in my career. I was working. It was kind of a funny story. You love this as a photographer, I think. I had to do. I was in St. Louis and I was doing this campaign, and I wanted gorgeous landscape photography, like black and white, like amazing photography. And I called this photographer up, and his name was Michael Eastman, an amazing photographer. But he's an artist. He didn't do marketing. He hadn't done marketing. He was very successful. Every museum around, a big museum in the world, he's there. He's done books on Cuba, books on Vanishing America, like really exactly what I want. And he's like, yeah, I wouldn't be right for you. And he hung up the phone. I was like, damn, I really thought he would be good for this project. And I went into a bookstore and I saw this book called Forgotten Forest, and it's shot by him. And it was like exactly what I wanted. And I called him up, and I didn't know him. And I'm like, I don't want to say profound, use profanity in this, but I called him a name, and he's like, who is this? I'm like, just let me show you the campaign that I want to shoot. I was like, give me 10 minutes. I promise you will want to shoot this. And so it was a 3 ad campaign, and there was 3 images per layout. And I said, here's the first one. I laid it out, and there were just black boxes. There were 3 black boxes on the layout. And I laid the first one out. I'm like, here's the first one. It's about this kind of idea. Here's the second one. And he's like, what am I looking at here? All I see is a bunch of black boxes. And I'm like, you're the photographer. I want you to figure out what goes in those boxes. These are my layouts. Like, I want you to do your thing. So, fast forward, he's one of my best friends. And we've shot lots over the years together, but he was like, I'm not used to this. I'm used to someone saying, here's my, my beer bottle and it's backlit and it's got a thing. He's like, I don't do that. Like, there's plenty of people. You don't need me for that. And, it's using the right, the right person for the right job. And it was kind of fun because that's kind of like how I approach kind of things. Now, of course, it might be a little bit more specific what you're shooting, but still, it's here's the world I want you to play in, but I'm not going to tell you exactly, Or we could do it ourselves, and then when that's the case, we just do it ourselves,
Right. Yeah. Well, that's good, man. I mean, I think it's nice as a photographer that to get that leeway from somebody. So I can see how that would have made him go, all right, well, hell yeah, I'll do this job now because I'm not being told exactly how I have to shoot this. What is, as far as clients, is there anything that you would like for clients in general to know? Maybe not necessarily your specific clients now, but somebody who wants to come to you or somebody who goes to any agency, to any creative director that maybe they don't quite understand about when they come to an agency. Anything like that?
Yeah, I think that there's no lane brands. There's no uncreative products or lane brands. I think I don't go, man, I really need an athletic shoe account. We, as creative people and problem solvers, the best clients are the ones that work with you and have respect for what you do. And it's sort of like that, here's my problem and here's the message I need to get across to this audience. I'm not going to micromanage every picture and every word, just like the way I knew if that guy shot that landscape in his way, it was going to be a home run, which it was. But that sort of mutual respect is the best client, and clients have gotten burned so many times by agencies because they just want to use them to force their cool stuff and get it to run and not have a concern with sort of the bottom line and making that work. And I think when you have, like we have some clients we've had for 40 years,
Wow.
We have meetings today with a client of 18 years. They know we're out there every day, like on their behalf and not trying to bait and switch. And it happens, I had a client who was really tough about not letting me do something a certain way. We were on a shoot and I was like 100 yards away and I grabbed the camera and I ran over the bridge and I'm like, here's what I'm trying, and here's why that, and she's like, oh, I get it. He's got my back. He's not trying to just do his artsy fartsy thing, and so those are really those are the clients that we, Jennifer would always say that we jump through glass for, because everybody's busy, everybody's working hard, and I think if someone knows that if you're just trying to do the best job you can, and because then as a creative person, it's like the little kid who shows the drawing to his mom. It's like you want to be appreciated for what you did, and if somebody encourages that, like what more as a creative person to go, wow, I really like what you do, I really appreciate what you do, maybe here's a way that could work a little better. And there's the trust, because sometimes your client would be like, you know what, it would look better, and certainly you're like, oh my gosh, you're right, it would. And when there's a mutual trust and respect, that's just the most rewarding relationship. And it's not about, because you can have a client with a really great product, it doesn't let you do anything, or it's
right.
To their that could wind up hurting them, where they're not doing the best work they could, but for a reason they're reluctant, and it could work better for them. So that's really the ideal the ideal client is really, it's really more of a like a psychographic than a specific demo or a specific product. That's, because that's why we get up each day, is to do fresh things and do amazing things, and for someone to go, thank you, I love that. That's like, it's addictive.
Right.
It's great. And it happens a lot, and the nice thing about, the digital world is you can find out pretty quickly and you can adjust without big investments. And I think that's where a lot of anxiety in our business comes from, because, I just spent $500,000 commercial, and after 6 months, we're not getting results. It's like you find out really fast if people are clicking or going to the website, and then you can adjust. So that's why I think people were a lot more conservative in the past too, because it was like this massive investment.
Oh yeah.
Gosh, it better not fail, or we wasted 6 precious months.
So last question for you, then I'll let you go. What is the most interesting or strangest thing that's ever happened to you since you've been in this business?
The strangest thing.
And it can be any kind of range of things, like staying in some hotel where, it looked like there were rats crawling through the walls while you're sleeping or whatever. That's from experience on that
one. There's a couple, you can take your pick. We had to launch a new product. It was pure Brazil cotton, and the client was like, well, we need to shoot in Brazil. And so we flew to Brazil, which was very stressful and a nightmare. In Sao Paulo, which is like a gargantuan, it's like from the air, Sao Paulo is to New York City. It's like New York City is like Charlotte compared to New York City. You're flying into New York City, and you look out the window and you can see the city. It's all there, compact, and it's huge. But flying in to that place. I looked out the window to the left, and there's buildings as far as I could see into the horizon. I looked out to the right as far as I could see, and the scale of that. Oh my God! It was really hard to fathom. I mean, people grow up in a 10-block radius and never leave. CEOs, if they have a meeting across town, they take helicopters, because it took us 2.5. We were going to scout a location. We had, like, let's say it was a Tuesday, and we were shooting on Wednesday, and we had to find this beautiful waterfall, but we had to scout it and shoot it the next morning. And it took us 2.5 to 3 hours to get out of the city, just to get out of the city onto the interstate, whatever. Right. Wow. To go to, it was kind of, we were shooting halfway between Sao Paulo and Rio. And so everybody shows up late, like they talk about, Brazil time, like, in other countries, like meeting at noon and leaving, like we didn't leave till 4. So they're driving us through the mountains and forest in Brazil to location scale in pitch blackness. And our client is starting to, like, my client's freaking out, because, like, she's like, how am I supposed to, like, he's like, what do you think about this location? And the van pulls up, and literally, it was like you had a black hood over you. You couldn't see anything. And so the location scout's like, well, here, I want to show you this waterfall. So he took me down a path and kept flicking a Bic lighter so that I wouldn't slip on the wet rocks, to show me a waterfall. And he showed me a waterfall, and it sounds like a massive waterfall. I'm 25 feet away from it, but it's pitch dark in the mountains of Brazil. I'm like, I think it may be a nice waterfall. It sounds like a nice waterfall, but I don't really know. And that was absurd.
Yeah.
And it was very stressful. But it was like, you're at the mercy of these people, and if you.
Did it work out?
It did work out. Yeah, it was beautiful. But we had a shoot we had a shoot again the next day. The production company, we had it was a beautiful location, and they didn't show up till after dark. We're shooting like a woman at the bottom of a waterfall, like supposed to be godlike light, and they didn't show up, and they brought like movie cameras, like big huge movie, like Hollywood movie cameras, and put them in the water around the woman, and they started to fall over, and one of the grip's arms got cut open, and we were photographing the woman on this rock. Like, it was a beautiful rock in the middle of this pool with a waterfall. It was like, fairyland set. It was actually a perfect location. And I'm standing on the rock just so the photographer can get his focus. And while the makeup artist is doing the model, and these giant, like, I don't know, 10K.
Were they hot lights? Big hot lights? Yeah.
Dark. By the time the crew got there, it was pitch dark. And the photographer's like, don't step in the water. Stay on the rock. Stay on the rock. Because they have all this electricity going into this thing.
Oh, yeah.
And the lights are falling over. And the grips, these poor guys that don't speak English are like standing in the water, holding these things for their lives, making sure that this huge light doesn't fall over. And so the next day we went back in the morning and got the shot. But it was like, that was our shoot day. It was a disaster in the crew. I forgot. They didn't even, they were supposed to be there at like 2 in the afternoon, noon, and they got there at like 7 o'clock at night. It was crazy. But you're at the mercy shooting in another country.
Yeah, I guess so.
We start to complain, they all of a sudden don't understand English. And
yeah.
So that was a pretty crazy one.
Yeah, I'd say that was pretty out there. Yeah.
The other funny shoot experience that we had was, we have a client that makes a bidet seat. So like a bidet is like, in other countries it's normal, and they're used to it. And part of sometimes what you have to do, in marketing for this is change perceptions, and it's a cultural shift, and it's really hard. And we did work for them that was successful. But when I first got the account, I'm like, if you want to have everybody, if you want to get the impression that, hey, this is for everyone and that everyone can use it, maybe we should show everyone using it. Mm-hmm. So this was the craziest kind of experience that I had in our business, because the idea was, let's film people using a bidet for the first time, and shoot them from here, like basically this what I
right.
Use. But actually they're on the ball, and they've never. So we put out a call for our models, and we wanted to make sure we had, like you do, it was going to be like 5 or 6 main talent. We wanted to show diversity and age range and all that kind of stuff. And some models were like, no way, like, this is I don't know who you guys are, but I'm not going to sit there with my pants down on a toilet for a shoot. But we actually created, we set up stand-ins, and we had people sit on the toilet, and we got our focus on our camera, and then we put curtains all around. We had built a bathroom set in the middle of the studio. We had warm running water.
I'm sure they're grateful for that.
And in slow motion, we shot people's reactions to using a bidet for the first time, and one of the guys, we had a remote, and they had a remote so they could do it, and we told them to hang on. We were having some technical difficulties, but we actually started filming, and we turned it on without him knowing, because we wanted to get this authentic, and it was a crazy, it was a really successful campaign, and it was the reactions, when you watch the spots, it's priceless, because
I bet
you can't contain your reaction the first time. And the accuracy of the product is crazy. It's crazy. Yeah, it was pretty funny. So that was kind of like a recent funny. It was only a couple of years ago that we did this, and the results were really great. We got a lot of press and whatnot. But it was one of those things where it's like,
that was a great idea too, to film that. Yes.
And yeah. And so ironically, during this pandemic with toilet paper shortage, the day seats have been flying off the shelves.
Oh, I bet. Yeah.
Weird things that happen in the world, but that was a fun and crazy experience too, that we created. The client was all about doing it. I can't believe that it happened. And then we also shot stills simultaneously too, so we could get those authentic reactions too. It was pretty fun.
Yeah, those are two great stories. I mean, those are really good. Better than I had hoped for. Well, man, thank you so much, John, for doing this. I really appreciate it. Anybody watching, listening, if you like it, be sure and like it, thumbs up it, subscribe to it, share it with all your friends, all that kind of stuff, and keep listening to Behind the Visual.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thanks, man.